believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Rica, the Rendez, also known as Ricky Franz, and a great conversation and episode for you today. Today we have the talented and amazing, courageous Jessica Sutta. And if you guys aren't familiar with her, she is a former member of the very popular and probably one of the most popular girl groups of all time called the Pussycat Dolls. I'm sure you've heard of them. If you haven't, if you Googled some of their songs and some of their top tracks, I'm sure those songs will sound familiar. When I was growing up, they were huge. And she has a very tragic story of how she went from getting vaccinated and believing the experts and the mainstream narrative and mainstream media to having a vaccine injury, which changed her life, not just physically, but mentally and her whole worldview. And she's one of the few celebrities, there are some out there, but there's many more that have these opinions that will not speak out publicly. And she's been doing interviews. She has not held back in regards to her opinions on the vaccines, on the COVID lockdowns, and all that stuff. So we obviously talk about all that. We also talk a little bit about her personal life, her upbringing, what it's like to be a celebrity and being famous, and much more. So it's a very intriguing, fascinating, and fun conversation. And before we get to that conversation, of course, I have to remind you guys, this is a value for value show. If you get some value out of the work that I put in, getting these guests, recording these conversations, editing them, uploading them, all the work that goes into putting together a great podcast and a great podcast episode for you, please consider giving some value back. It doesn't have to be financial. Of course, I know many of us are in tough financial times. And if that's the case, don't worry about it. Rate the show, review the show, tell people about the show, share it on your Twitter account, Facebook, create clips and share it wherever. Do whatever you can to get the word out there, and that helps because big tech does not want these type of conversations to be found on the internet. So please help any way you can. Subscribe to the show on any platform that you listen to podcasts, and that all will help a lot. So with that said, if you can financially support the show, there's plenty of ways of doing it. You can send a one-time donation via PayPal, Venmo. You can send Bitcoin or Ethereum to my crypto wallet. And it's always much appreciated and exciting when I randomly get a one-time donation. So thank you everybody who has done that. But if you want to support us monthly, we also have a Patreon page, which is awesome because it's income and a little extra money that I can count on every month. And if you do support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, you can join our Patreon podcast, which is a podcast I do with my Patreon supporters. It's a great way of getting on the show. It's a great way of connecting with other listeners. And like I always tell you guys, I try to remind you that no donation is too little. If you donate as little as $1 a month, and if a small percentage of the people who download these episodes donated only $1 a month, I could do this show full time. So that shows how little we all have to contribute, or a small percentage has to contribute to really help with the goal of eventually doing the Ripple Effect podcast full time. And if I do the show full time, I'll have more time, more energy, less outside distractions getting in the way of giving you the best version of the Ripple Effect podcast I can give you. So please help with that if you can. Other ways of supporting the show is, of course, checking out our merch store. You can go directly to the merch store by going to the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com, or you can find this link and all my links on my website, therippleeffectpodcast.com, or use the URL rickyveranis.com. They all bring you to the same website. And the merch store has hoodies, t-shirts, tank tops, hats, kids' clothes, and much more. So please check out the Ripple Effect Podcast merch.com. Purchase yourself some merch, represent the podcast, and support the podcast at the same time. And we have a few sponsors. And like I always remind you guys, all my sponsors are things I believe in. They're people that I like, people who have been on the show before becoming sponsors. And my first sponsor is Content Safe. Matt, who created Content Safe, has been on the show a bunch. He's also been on my other show, The Union of the Unwanted, which I host with Sam Tripoli, Midnight Mike, and Charlie Robinson. And Matt helps me and many other content creators get all my video episodes on all the channels I'm on, all the platforms I'm on, by just letting me upload to one platform, one place, and then he syncs all my channels together. So he saves me tons of time. If you're a streamer, podcaster, any type of content creator, hit up Matt from Content Safe. Let him know you're a listener of the Ripple Effect podcast, and he'll definitely hook you up. He also helps me with building my website and managing my website. So he has a lot of different services. If you're looking for a IT guy, hit up Matt. I'm sure whatever you need, he could probably help you out with, or at least send you to the correct person who can help you out. My next sponsor is Richard Grove, who is the host of the Grand Theft World podcast, his University of Reason. And he has these very popular autonomy courses, which has helped a lot of people and also helped him connect with the community, expand on some skills, learn some new skills. So if you're at a crossroads in life, if you want to try something new, if you want to see if you can maybe get out of whatever crappy, unfulfilling job you might be at, please consider checking out the University of Reason. You can help yourself and you can help the Ripple Effect podcast at the same time. So please use the links in the show description or on my website. And of course, my last sponsor is Element Electrolytes. It's the sponsor I use probably the most because I drink Element Electrolytes every day. It helps my workouts, staying hydrated. It helps with when I'm playing sports. It helps when it's just hot out, so I can drink less water and stay hydrated. It doesn't kick me out of fasting, doesn't kick me out of ketosis, so I get the benefits of those things and still get to drink something with flavor. It helps with a lot of the dehydration symptoms like muscle fatigue, soreness, tightness, recovery, helps with brain fog, helps with headaches, which is one of those dehydration symptoms people might not even realize is caused by dehydration. There's a lot of people out there who have headaches on a daily basis, migraines, and they don't realize they need to increase their uptake of electrolytes and stay hydrated. They taste awesome. There's no artificial colors, no artificial flavors. It's easy. It's just little packets of electrolytes, only magnesium, potassium, and sodium, and enough of them that makes a difference, because that's the other thing. There's a lot of electrolyte drinks out there, hydration drinks, but there's not enough of the things you need. There is a lot of sodium in Element Electrolytes, but that's because that's what you sweat out the most. That's what you need to put back in your body the most to prevent the muscle soreness and fatigue and brain fog and all that other stuff that comes with dehydration. So please use the links in the show description or on my website and stay hydrated. Drink something that tastes amazing, is good for you, and is going to help you stay hydrated with much less water. That's it, guys. Enjoy this amazing conversation with Jessica Sutta. Thanks, everyone, for the support. Thanks, everybody, for being patient. It's a summer with sports and family time and work and all these other things being wound up. It's hard to get these shows out as quickly as I record them, but I'm doing my best. So thanks for the support. Thanks for being patient. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace. Hello, Jessica. How are you?
Hi, Vicky. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice meeting you too. How you feeling today?
So stiff. So stiff. How's the lighting in this? Is this okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
the majority of people listen. They don't. Well, they
Oh,
might.
they just listen. Okay, good.
Well, if they find out you're on, they might actually watch. But typically, they listen. Yeah.
I'm in my she shed. My husband built me a she shed, so I painted.
Oh, awesome.
Art has been something that has just given me so much relief and just gets my mind out of the pain. But it's been tough, man. Today I feel okay, but it goes from like stiff to burning to not feeling well at all. And then some days I'll feel okay.
Yeah,
It's a curse.
so crazy. I mean, how much of this experience has changed the way you look at like everything, health, nutrition, the experts, quote unquote. I mean, how I mean, obviously you've always been fit, right? Like you were a heat dancer, right, back in the day.
Uh-huh.
I'm out of Massachusetts, so we are grieving today after game 7 last night. But
Sorry about that.
yeah, it's all right. So but like obviously you've always been fit, you've always been an active person, a dancer. You've always been very, I mean, obviously touring and whatnot, that beat you up. I mean, people I was music too. I played music, and I would always tell people, like, you don't know how much energy it requires to put on a show, like just to play for an hour. Like it just takes, and then never mind if you're dancing and singing. I mean, it's a whole body workout. So
Yeah.
that I'm sure health and nutrition's always been something you've been conscious of, but now after this whole experience, like, have you just completely rethought, like, okay, the medical world, the experts, nutrition, like, how much of your worldview has changed?
My world is absolutely completely different. Um, I don't look at life the same. I don't look at the world the same at all. This, I had my son 2 years ago, and that was one of the biggest awakenings of my life. But when this happened, this transcended me in a way where I can't go back. And the way that I view the world is unfortunately in a very dark place at the moment. I don't trust anyone. There's very, very few doctors that I do trust now, that they're coming around now, that they're actually accepting vaccine injury. But for years now, and even as much as I love these doctors, they're like, no, it's impossible. No, it's in your head. And then finally I saw my rheumatologist, who I absolutely adore. And she goes, okay, yeah, I guess this is happening. I just want to let you know, you're not the only one. I'm like, lady, I've been trying to tell you this for years. Like, I've been telling you this. And then a big reason why I go to these Western medicine doctors is because I need to spread the word. I need to say, okay, this is what's working. I follow the frontline doctors religiously. I actually went to their conference, which was life-changing. And I was able to witness firsthand accounts of data and proof of, like, things underneath the microscope, and things that happen to people in their autopsies, that what the spike protein does to the body and where it enters. And I mean, it goes everywhere. So I have to kind of like educate the doctors saying, this is what I'm learning, please, follow frontline doctors and really get a grasp, because people are really suffering. And what I realized is that this is such a complex disease, and it's very hard to treat. So you got to find someone, a physician, who is passionate and wants to work on this complex disease, because it's been 2 years. And to be honest with you, Ricky, I don't feel good. I never feel good. I always have burning in my rib cage. My hands feel stiff and my body feels stiff. I can't dance anymore. I mean, it definitely has pulled me down to a very deep depression.
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah.
who's ever been sick can understand, because I mean, even if you're just sick for a couple days, you're like, oh, I would give anything just to feel healthy. Now imagine like living with that all the time, and being in that mindset. And and the mind and body are connected, so it's like physically you don't feel
Right.
good, mentally you don't feel good, mentally you don't feel good, physically you don't feel good. And
Right.
it's so crazy when you look at the fact that they were telling pregnant women, and I've heard you, during your interview, like that I'm like, they didn't even study this on pregnant women. Pregnant women are told not to eat sandwich meats, but it's okay to get a experimental mRNA, technology that has never been approved on human use ever. Like it's completely okay to do. It was just so surreal. How much of this has, like, what was your stance on vaccines even prior to this, and also how has this affected maybe the way you look at vaccines for your children, or future vaccines like a flu vaccine or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I was always pro-vaccine. I mean, I went and got this vaccine, which turns out to be not a vaccine. It's a gene therapy mRNA technology. It's not even a vaccine. But my son, well, got all the shots, except for the COVID shot. I did believe in that. But let me tell you, this is absolutely changed my mind on everything. And I think, since we weren't allowed to ask the questions, now I want to see the data. I want to see the proof that this vaccine or whatever you're going to put in my son's body is going to make a difference. Because from what I'm learning and reading the books from Robert Kennedy Jr. is that they don't work. And a lot of things, a lot of the diseases are already eradicated. So it doesn't make sense to inject that into your body. And there's also a link to autism. And, I would hear it from other people, but the vax injured community before the COVID shot was very small, and I my heart breaks for them now because I meet a lot of them, and I'm like, wow, how lonely, how isolating, how you must have felt, and no one believes you, no one wants to help you, and they're screaming as loud as they can, but no one will listen, but for me, it's like, ask the questions. I want to see the data. I want to see the proof, because that's it. I think this whole situation has been, you can't ask any questions. And if you do, you're the bad guy. You're an anti-vaxxer. No, I want to know what's going in my body. And when you learn more about what the mRNA, with the spike protein, how it's built, and the peptides that are connected to it, actually crosses the blood-brain barrier. So it causes neurological issues. And from the autopsies that I saw, not only does it enter your brain, but it enters your bone marrow, enters your skull. I mean, it's terrifying what this does. And unfortunately, I regret it every day that I went to CVS and did this to myself. I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's not your fault.
I try not to live there, I try not to be in the anger there, but it's all different phases of anger and sadness and depression, mix it with a little bit of optimism, because I built an amazing tribe through the vaccine community, the vaccine injured community. So yeah.
And the thing is, it's not your fault, because you are only as good as the information you have access to. That's why, like, the censorship thing has always been an issue that I constantly just preach over and over again, how dangerous it is when they're censoring people. Because I got kicked off YouTube in 2021 or whenever it was, because I had Dr. Robert Malone on, I had Dr. Pierre Corey, I had, Peter.
The heroes.
Yeah, the heroes. The guy.
Yep.
And I would tell people, I'm like, listen, they shouldn't decide what truth is. Like, you're an adult, like, you should be able to hear all perspectives, all opinions, and then filter out what doesn't make sense. But your opinion's only as good as the information you have access to. And if they're controlling the information you have access to, they're controlling your opinion. It's social engineering. Right. And so to me, right, even if you disagree with somebody, it's like they should have that's what the freedom of speech is for, is to protect unpopular speech, because, like they say, popular speech doesn't need protecting. So to me, it's, right, why should a guy like Dr. Robert Malone, who was a part of the mRNA technology, the patenting of it, that gene therapy, and yet, right, like, you're censoring his voice? Like, shouldn't that, just plant the seed of skepticism a little bit? Or maybe the fact that ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, which are generic cheap drugs, those things were, like, banned in some, in New York it was banned, so it's just like all these things became political issues. And to me, it just boggles my mind, because people like yourself, like, you just listen to your doctors, and you respect your doctors, and you respect these authorities. And but one thing that people, I think, discover is similar to the music industry. It's all about money, and it's all a business, and it's unfortunate. But your experiences with the music industry, and I'm sure some people know some of the stuff that happened, with the Pussycat dolls, and how you guys, in my humble opinion, didn't get your fair share of the cut and profit. But that's unfortunately a common story in the music industry. But to me, like, it's the same thing. Like, everything is basically treated as a business, and pharmaceutical companies treat medicine as a business. And for some reason in 2020, all of a sudden we thought Big Pharma were the good guys.
Well, that's changed for myself. I think the scariest part is that they were just making it one narrative. There was no room for conversations. These are doctors saying, hey, listen, I remember Dr. Peter McCullough saying, I must not be the only doctor that's questioning this. Why are we not asking the questions? And the fact that they were censored destroyed me. Because if I would have had just one, like, idea that this could happen to me, there's no way I would have done this. Because number one, as it turns out, the vaccine doesn't work at all. It's not safe. It's not effective. If it was one thing where it was actually stopping the pandemic, then okay, I would take this injury and be prideful of it and say, okay, I did this for the community. But the truth is, it didn't do anything. In fact, it weakens the immune system. And I've learned that a side effect from the vaccine is getting COVID. So the insanity of this whole thing, it's just it blows my mind every single day. And that's where I stand. I just don't trust anything anymore, unless it's like the Dr. Robert Malone's, Peter McCullough, Dr. Corey. Those are my people, and thank God I had to search. It goes down rabbit holes to find real information. And I'm like, why is this being censored? Why is it that I put that I am vaccine injured? I have it. I have a code. I was diagnosed by a doctor. I can post that, but people will be like, nah, you're making it up. You're lying. Impossible, And it's just bizarre that everyone's just in this mass formation psychosis. And I just pray that they get out of it soon before it's too late.
Well, I think, with the vaccine topic, at first, that propaganda has been so strong for so long. And one of those things where it's like, I give vaccines to kids. Well, my kids that weren't vaccinated, but like typically, and it took a lot of convincing my wife, because similar to yourself, like most people are just like, yeah, vaccines are safe, and that's what we're told. They don't realize that like the doctors and pediatricians that are giving you that information is getting that information from the pharmaceutical companies that are trying to sell you the product. So It's like, yeah, and you just regurgitate this information. Nobody really looks into it. And I think Robert Kennedy Jr. in his book, like you said, also another guest that was just on my last podcast, Dr. Alan Palmer, who wrote this book, Truth Will Prevail, 1,200 studies that refute the vaccine study or vaccine claims. And there's like tons of these great people out there who are out there like proving that, like all these things like polio and all the stuff that you give all the credit to the vaccines, like the numbers are already down. Herd immunity and Mother Nature was already taking care of the problem. And then the vaccine gets introduced and we give the vaccine all the credit. And we saw it happening in real time during the COVID era, because the vaccine, to some people, they give the vaccine all the credit to why we're out of this pandemic. No, I'm like, we're out of this pandemic because they profit enough. And now, they were just, basically starting to open things up because people were rallying around these doctors and people were getting upset. And you could only paint that illusion for so long, because if you looked outside your window, or if you went to Florida where you were born, we would go down to Florida all the time. My wife has family down there, and I'm like, oh my God, like we live in Massachusetts where everybody's convinced it's the end of the world. You come down to Florida and everybody's fine. So it's like, which one's the real reality? Or you realize like, oh, reality is being painted by the TV. Like they're deciding what reality is for us.
It's telling a vision, they're telling you a vision, one narrative. And I stopped watching the news here. KTLA, the last time I watched it was when they had a problem with the military stopping the mandates of the COVID vaccine. And the lady goes, can you believe they still believe it's not safe and effective? Like, and I'm sitting here with neuropathy, like I'm burning in my rib cage. I'm like so debilitated. I perform for the troops. I'm a big supporter of the troops. So if any of them have this experience, so what are we doing to our country? You know what I mean? Like that is just criminal. So yeah, I don't watch it. I only listen to people like you or people that are awake, because it's getting to a point where it's ridiculous at this point.
Now, living in California during the COVID era, I mean, California or China-fornia, I'd like to call it. A friend of mine, Miriam, came up with that term. Like, what a great term! I'm like China, because she left California too, and a lot of people are. Like it must have been just. I mean, the amount of anxiety living there, because I do believe that, like, I believe in a ripple effect. I believe in energy, positive, negative energy. And during COVID, it almost over and over again, you would hear people talk about like they felt like they're in a spiritual war, and it was like you could almost sense the trauma that the world was going through together, and the fear, the anxiety. Being pregnant during all this, being a new mother, I mean, that's tough enough. Now, living in California, I mean, how was that as an experience? I mean, do you regret being there? Did you think about leaving, California? Like, what was your experience?
Well, we definitely feel like the walls are closing in here in California. I love Los Angeles, but it's changed so much. During the pandemic, I didn't leave my house. Remember, I'm following mass media and seeing all the numbers go up and all these terrible stories on like People magazine. This woman died after giving birth and she had COVID. Like this whole thing, it was a scare tactic. It was a scary time, and wearing a mask pregnant, not the best feeling. So I just, the whole thing was torturous, and I was scared to death the entire pregnancy. I truly was, because you just don't know the truth. I wish I would have known some of the things, not the propaganda, but it made the experience really scary, you know.
Since then, you're still in California?
Oh, yeah, I am. Yeah.
Uh,
We're looking at properties other places. My mom wants to move to Florida. I think the school systems have changed so much in California. The curriculum is just, listen, I'm an open-minded person. I am, but it's just getting too wackadoodle. And I think there's some agenda going towards the kids. And from my perspective, let's keep the kids kids. You know what I mean? Let's keep the tomboys tomboys. Let's keep the gay boys gay. Like, let's let them live and grow up and decide as an adult what they want to do. It's bizarre, the things that they have to think about now. It makes me nauseous thinking about it. It really does.
Yeah, the kids thing really, I think, motivates a lot of people to be more active, and I think that's where a lot of parents drew the line. I mean, growing,
Yeah.
I think we're not too far in age. Growing up, I mean, the people who were homeschooled were like, oh, they're just like crazy people
Yeah.
who can't let go of their kids, And it's like now
Right.
you look at people who are homeschooled, you're like, oh, they're aware people who realize like, hey, this school has become just a propaganda machine where they start planting seeds of things that go against maybe your beliefs. And the way I look at it is like that should be like I want to be the one answering the most important questions when my kids are curious about things. I want to be the
Sure.
one who helps mold their worldview. Like just teach them the math and stuff like that, and stay neutral with all these other topics.
100%. But it hasn't been that. And I do plan to homeschool my son, but I do like him to have some sort of community and friends, and, but maybe I know a lot of people that want to homeschool their kids. So we're just going to get a pod when it's time, until things clear up. I hope this is not forever, you know.
Yeah.
I really do. I mean, it's just, yeah, the whole thing. It's spiritual warfare, but it's warfare. I mean, I feel like we're in the middle of a war. When I'm angry about this vaccine injury, I've had psychiatrists tell me, this is a war crime, you're a war victim. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And it's scary territory to even talk about. But more studies are coming out, more proof is coming out that the COVID was biowarfare, And I do believe virus was dangerous from what I've learned from frontline CCC conference, but also the vaccine as well. It's like they're the same, I don't know. The whole thing has just been a nightmare.
Yeah. Well, how? Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, it's unreal what you have to live with, and the fact that people will demonize you for even speaking about your struggles is just. I mean, same thing happened to Jimmy Dore. Same thing. I mean, Robert Malone was considered a anti-vaxxer, even though Dr. Robert Malone got the vaccine. I mean, it's the most ridiculous lie
Yeah.
ever. It doesn't make any sense. But a lot of people in Hollywood, in the music industry, they really pushed this, like helped Big Pharma, because Big Pharma, it was emergency authorization, so they couldn't advertise their product, but they didn't have to because politicians and celebrities did it for them, and you couldn't even watch TV without a commercial being on TV. Um,
Or watch the Grammys without being presented by Pfizer, right? Brought to you by Pfizer.
yeah. Did you see a lot of people who were just afraid to speak out, who maybe did doubt the mainstream narrative and maybe were questioning what was going on or how effective the vaccine was, but just were just too afraid to speak out?
I can't tell you how many people I know that are celebrities that are vaccine injured. So many. And at first I was like, okay, I understand. I understand you can't speak out. You don't want to lose endorsements. You don't want to lose this. But when I got into the vaccine injury world and I looked into the eyes of grieving parents that lost their kids to shot, or I saw someone paralyze it, the reality set in. And now I have a lot of resentment towards those celebrities for not speaking out, because there's too many people suffering. And in fact, this is a crisis. We're in a crisis. And if we don't get mainstream media attention soon it's going to be so hard to care for all of these people that their whole lives have been destroyed. It's surreal. And the problem is, when you try to show people what it is, they don't look like, they're trained to look the other way. I can tell them these horror stories, all this stuff, and the next thing they say is, I wonder when I should go get my booster. And I'm just like, why am I even wasting my time talking to you when I'm telling you how dangerous this is?
Yeah,
it's scary.
It is crazy. I mean, I think, and this goes, I think the one of the root causes of this problem is like we're told, we tell our kids to like, don't question authority. You go to school, be a good student,
Right.
listen to your teacher, listen to your, coach, listen to, and it's like you never question things. And then, you get older and you're a good civilian, you listen to your doctor, you listen to whatever, you don't get in trouble, you listen to the police officer, you listen, well, and then you never push back. So when the expert tells you like this is safe and effective, like you're almost detached from reality of the fact that like things, the world's run by people who don't have a moral compass, and that's just the truth. And I think for many people that it like ignorance is bliss, right? Like you'd rather not go down that dark reality hole of like, okay, this is how things really work. Like people don't really care about your health or whatever. They care about profit, they care about power, they care about so I think that one of the problems is their schooling. You hear about it all the time where it's just like you just teach kids to regurgitate stuff, listen to authority, don't question things. So I think that that's one of the things with homeschooling. I think the popularity of it's going to help a little bit, hopefully. And
Sure.
and I also think when you push, eventually things will push back, and you're starting to see other platforms like Rumble get bigger, and obviously Elon Musk, the popularity of him buying Twitter because of all the censorship and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I feel like things are hopefully going in the right direction, and I like to be optimistic. And in that optimistic note, what have you done? Because obviously dealing with your health conditions, you've had I'm sure, try everything possible in regards to diet, nutrition,
Everything.
foods, vitamins. Like, what have you done in regards to lifestyle or health, nutrition changes that have helped a little bit? Anything?
I have not. I'm like, I have not found a protocol that works. At the moment, anyone that's vaccine injured, it's important to get a cytokine test and the S1 protein panel. So finally, it indicated what was truly happening with me. So it's my immune system. I have vascular inflammation, and I have a very bad blood clotting disorder. So for me, right now, I take Eliquis, which is a blood thinner, steroids, especially it helps with the flare, baby aspirin, nattokinase, low antihistamine diet, which I'm not that great about, because the thing is that I'm not hungry. And I lost 50 pounds when this happened. I had baby weight. So in 3 months, I lost, 50 pounds, and I still am underweight. And that's what scares me so much about vaccine injury, is that you see that people get really, really skinny, like skeletons. And that's just terrifying. So I try to, maybe protein shakes and things. I can't exercise yet, but swimming really helps. And being around people that understand you and have compassion and are not questioning why you feel bad, that, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's one of the biggest things, is when people don't believe you and you're just like trying to convince them, and you just feel like crap. You're just like, oh my God, I still have some people in my life where I told them yesterday, this is what's going on. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. I'm like, why do you think I would make this up for so long? Don't you think I want to go take ballet? Don't you think I want to like follow the dreams I have as a film director? Like, so I think it's like having your fellowship is the most important. Get on the meds that work for you, but every body is different. Everyone's going to react to things differently. My body rejects even vitamins like methylene blue. My body can't take NAD drips. I go into a flare up in my rib cage. So I don't know. I'm still on the search of trying to feel normal again, but I just feel like this is forever. Sucks.
Well, hopefully it's not, and hopefully I mean, hopefully we find something that works. And I think as more and more people are outspoken, and I have the same feeling where I think people should be outspoken because, it's the same reason why I'm always so outspoken about my kids being unvaccinated, because my kids
Yeah.
have no autoimmune issues, no allergies. They're star athletes. They're star. I have a 8-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl, and they're great at they're great at school. They're cognitively always sharp. They're physically full of energy, almost to a flaw sometimes. And it's
I love
to me, like, the reason why I'm not ashamed to say it is because I want people to be like, your pediatrician is going to scare the shit out of you, and they're going to tell you that every bad thing's going to happen to your child if you don't vaccinate them. Well, here's some kids who never see their pediatrician because they're never sick and nothing, they have no issues whatsoever. And and I believe in mother nature. I believe, you've been a dancer your whole life, like the body's capable. And I believe you tore your ACLs.
Mhm.
I mean, that's
Oh,
I played sports. I still play sports. So I know how crazy of an injury that is. I know plenty of people who have tore their ACLs and just hung up the jerseys, never played any sport again.
yeah.
So we know, like, people who play sports and been around people who've had massive injuries like that. We know how incredible the human body is. You know how
Mhm.
if you exercise, you eat well, you stay active, you do the things it needs, it can recover from some amazing things. And but one thing that you hit on that I think is also really important, we're talking about physical, recovery, is also the mental pressure that all this puts on you and your family, right? Because now
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure how you're a new mom. I mean, you want to have as much energy as possible. You want to be as positive in mood as possible, and
Right.
all this has made it much harder.
It has. I got to tell you though, my little boy, that kid keeps me alive, and he brings so much joy. And no matter if my body's in a flare up, I pick him up, we play. There's a lot of guilt there because sometimes I'm like, luckily I have a very supportive husband. He's been so amazing throughout this. But I'm like, honey, I need to go lay down, and I'll lay down for 20 minutes and then I'll come back down because I'm a dancer, so I can handle pain. But this pain has knocked me out. This has just been surreal. I just, I can't even believe it's even happening to me. And then even when I speak about it, I'm just like, but I want to go touch base on the vaccine with doctors promoting it. I did find out. So when I was pregnant, my doctor wanted me to get the COVID vaccine. It's safe. They're immune to COVID, blah, 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 blah. I come to find out she was going to make like $300 for that vaccination. So they were getting kickbacks. So they didn't care that it wasn't tested. They didn't care about any of that. All they cared about was filling their pockets. And to me, that's disgusting. And I think all doctors that did that to their patients should have their licenses ripped away from them. That's it. I hate to say it like that, but if I would have lost my son for this, I don't know.
Well, think
I
about all
can't even think of the thought.
think about all the celebrities that were basically inspiring little kids to
Oh,
I mean, I think it was Sesame Street did like an episode of like I mean, this is like propaganda at its worst. You were literally taking advantage of little children who don't know any better. And
right.
you're convincing them, and especially if you're at the age where you don't need your parents' permission, you can just go to a CVS or whatever, and you're a young teenager, you're a young adult, and you're like, yeah, let me go do it because, whatever, but celebrity said it was, I should go do it and it would help.
Elmo did it, I saw that one. I was like, and Skip, I couldn't believe it. I didn't seen that, you know.
Well, you talked
Uh,
about kickbacks. How many do you think all these celebrities that were do you, I mean, obviously you don't have to say any names, but are you aware of some of these celebrities being financially motivated or are they all just financially motivated, or
yeah, I would say that the only reason they don't speak out is they probably lose a show. They'll probably lose a deal. I mean, going against this is a big no-no, and at this point I'm canceled. I mean, and I'm fine with it. I'm totally fine with it because I can't play in this wackadoodle world that everyone's in, this little make-believe BS world. I can't do it. Like I said, once you get past this and you realize what's happened, you can't go back. It is money motivated, and also fame. Fame is a drug. People will do anything they can possibly do to be famous. And I've seen that firsthand. I've seen the most disgusting, most disturbing things ever, But to me, like, they can have it. They can have it, because like I'm going to do what's best for humanity, and I'm going to help the people that I know are suffering like myself, you know? And it shocks me that I know someone's severely injured and she's still like dancing around in her Instagram and the filtered picture. I mean, it's just, I'm kind of disgusted every time I see her. I'm just like, ugh, I don't know. Caught me on a bad day today. I think I'm a little angry.
Well, it's it's funny. Like this is the topic that every time I talk about it, I can feel myself getting upset again because
Yeah.
I can just remember like going to school board meetings and arguing about my kids having to wear masks in schools,
Oh,
or the fact that they're like telling kids at school that they should get vaccinated or whatever, and I'm like fighting with parents, and I'm just like, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm trying to help you, and I'm just trying to
in
tell
her
you
love.
that like. Have you watched Dope Sick? Do you know the Oxycontin, the pill epidemic that, especially in the East Coast where I live, and when your hometown and down in Florida, like Florida, Massachusetts, the East Coast, like that was a real epidemic, and that epidemic was created by pharma. And these are the
Right.
that now you want to believe are the good guys. I'm like, they lied, they paid off the FDA. They told doctors that it was non-addictive, and doctors were repeating that it was
They
not.
said it was 1% chance of becoming addicted to an opioid. Are you serious? The commercials. I just saw one the other day. 1%. Like, what?
You mean the same experts that told us that, the doctors on the commercials that said that tobacco wasn't addictive or wouldn't cause cancer?
Exactly.
The same nutritionists and doctors that told us that, high fat, high cholesterol diets were causing all these health issues and obesity. Like the food pyramid we grew up on was complete horseshit, for lack of a better term. Like there's just
Milk and steak. Yum. Like, what the hell?
the food pyramid I grew up on literally was all like carbs. It was bread,
Right.
like to consume
Right.
them. I'm like, that's literally the path to obesity. And
Right.
then that's the thing. Like a lot of these issues that they create, they profit from us trying to resolve those issues. So it's like when people talk about the doctor I just had on, Dr. Alan Palmer, he said this on the show where he's like, so, and I forget what the money number is, but he's like, so you have this increase of the vaccines and the vaccine schedules, and then you see this correlation within the increase of like autism and autoimmune issues and allergies and all that stuff, and then they
Yeah.
profit from those things because those things
Right.
need remedies, and so now
Right.
it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
so just this vicious cycle of I mean, Prozac, for example, and I remember in the 90s, the videos of people talking about being suicidal on an antidepressant. I'm like, how is this even on the market? The fact that a side effect for an antidepressant can be suicide, and yet no doctor tells you that exercise will actually help depression and anxiety more than any prescription drug. Like, no doctor will tell you that.
Right. They're not even taught that in school about diet, from what I've learned from people that went to medical school. It's all about big pharma. It's all pill for an ill. Let me tell you, when this happened, I went to the hospital. I went to the hospital twice. The second time I went, they gave me a lifetime supply, I'm not kidding, of gabapentin. They put me on Lyrica. I mean, I was on so many meds that it was exasperating my pain. And I was just like, and my jaw was clenching because they put me on some Balta. And it was just like, I'm telling you, this is not working. And I knew right then and there, I'm like, oh my God, they did this on purpose. They did this on purpose because they can fix these symptoms, which they can't with the medications they already have. I don't know. The whole thing has just been bizarre.
Now, how do you find so obviously some of the things that have brought you some happiness. Luckily, it was a blessing probably in disguise, the timing of having a child, because like you said, the beautiful thing about kids is that that smile, everything else goes away. All the stresses, it brings a joy that I always say, like having children is like somebody trying to talk to me about like being in a war zone. I'm like, you can describe it, but I might never really understand unless I experience it. I'm like, having kids is the same thing. I had everybody tell me it's life changing, it's life changing. I'm like, sure,
Yeah.
I get it. And then I had kids. I'm like, oh, I didn't get it. I really didn't.
No, I didn't get it either. I didn't get it either. And yeah, it's wild because it's the most beautiful experience of my life. The love that I have for him is like unexplainable. I'm so grateful for him and also my husband, because if it wasn't for them, I don't think I would have made it. I truly don't. I mean, it got really dark for a long time for me, you know, and it's not an option anymore to ever do that. But I can understand why people do that to themselves, because it's like not being believed and not having doctors supporting you and no one wants to help you. It's really a scary place to be.
Well, community is the most important thing in our
For
survival.
sure.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
having friends and friendships, and like my wife always says that like I have like really thick skin. I'm like, I do a podcast and I have controversial people on, and but I'm always honest, and I'm just a truth seeking person who's trying to understand myself and the world around me. And sometimes that leads to opinions that aren't really popular, but I'm like, I know who I am and I know where my heart is and where my moral compass is. So anybody who doesn't know me, who has a shitty opinion about me, like why should I care about their opinion? Like the only opinions I care about are my kids, my wife, my close friends, my close family.
Amen.
Those are people who their opinions matter. Because if they're saying something critiquing my behavior, they might actually make a valid point, and I know they're not saying it to try to hurt my feelings. They might be saying it just because they're like, this is how you're actually acting, or this is what you should do, or whatever. And I know that their opinion comes from a good place. But like, if
Right.
somebody online, and like, what do I care? And a lot of times it's just people who aren't at peace in their own lives, and they're just taking out that internal unhappiness on somebody else to try to make everybody else as unhappy as them. So finding peace and like being content with that is really important, just being at it. And I feel like when you're in your situation where you have people, like you said, who don't believe you, who think I mean, I don't know why you would make it up. The last thing you would want to do is not do all the things you enjoy and and be on my show instead of being on the
Yeah.
Today show talking about a new album that's coming out. It's like it just, to me, it doesn't make any sense why you'd make this up. And the way that the media treats anybody who says anything bad about vaccines whatsoever. I mean, nobody wants to be a part of this group, but we kind of have to be, because
I did not wake up and say, hey, I want to, be hated and get verbal abuse online and stuff. You know what I mean? And people have a voice online that they would never have in person. You know what I mean? They say, and they're projecting whatever their view is. And I've had to kind of disarm people and be like, hey, listen, I understand how you feel, but I always want what's best for you. I always want what's best for you. I don't care how you feel about me. You know what I mean? Because I'm not trying to fight people with the misinformation. I'm trying to show the truth and the data and the scientific evidence that I have been learning. And it's like I can't scream any louder, but I have some really thick skin now, and I never used to have thick skin back in the day when I was in the Pussycat Dolls. I was a wussy. I did not like the attention. I did not like any of it. You know what I mean? But now I have a reason to speak out, and I'm okay with the hate. I'm okay. You know what I mean? Because I'm getting to the people that I need to speak to.
yeah, that's kind of surprising to hear, because I would assume like being in the spotlight, obviously it was one of the biggest groups ever of that time. I remember growing up in early 2000s. I mean, that was some of the biggest hits of that time was by
Yeah.
your group. And you figure there's always, regardless, I mean, I've had other musicians on the show, like there's, no matter what you do, there's always going to be haters. Like some people are going to
Yeah.
hate your new album because it's different. Some people are going to
Right.
hate your new album because it sounds the same and you didn't do anything different. So it's like there's no happy medium.
No.
So how did you deal with like that back in the day? Did you just kind of, obviously people aren't as active on social media back then as they are now,
Right.
but obviously there's still press and you hear stuff. Did you learn how to just ignore that stuff and just kind of do your own thing and be like, hey, I can't keep up or care about what this person said about this song or the album or performance, right? And that stuff. I mean, how, if you didn't have thick skin, how did you handle all those eyes on you and all that pressure?
I think a big part of my Pussycat Doll era was that I really didn't know who I was. You know what I mean? I knew like deep down inside I'm a good person, but like as a celebrity, as of that, it was very difficult, and it didn't feel as authentic. And I did some music that was authentic, but with the dolls, it really felt like God, I'm not trying to talk bad, but it wasn't as natural. Like being on stage, I loved it. I love dancing. I love performing. That's my favorite. But like the paparazzi, or I remember this one paparazzi, I just broken up with a boyfriend and I was crying in the bar with my friend and they got it all on camera. And it was just so invasive and disgusting. And luckily we didn't have social media back then. but and camera phones, but now it's like camera phones and like no boundaries at all. I mean, the whole fame thing is still really strange to me. But if I really am being honest with myself, it never really felt good back then either. Although it was something that I wanted, and I loved to be able to express myself as a dancer and connect with people and make fans and have that. And there was a little bit of obsession with fame. I'm like, okay, yeah, I really want this. But then when you really realize what life is all about, I don't know. I think fame is kind of silly. I think it's really silly. I think it's very narcissistic. And the more I get to know myself, I know that's not who I am. You know, it didn't feel right. You know, I'm not that I regret my time with it. I don't know. It just, when I look back, it just feels like, wow, a whole different person that it doesn't even feel like me, you know?
Yeah, and
I
it's
met myself through this whole experience. I know exactly who I am. I know what I speak out is true, and what I'm showing you is who I am, you know? Not just an idea of what I think you want me to be. I think that's kind of what it was with Pussycat Dolls. It was like, you want me to be like this, okay, this is, but it's not really truly who I am.
well, I think that's just the common, vibe of being young. I think we all go through that when you're in your teens, you're in your
That's
20s, you're
21.
trying to discover yourself. That's why you shouldn't be giving kids hormone replacement, at a young
No, no, should
because
not.
that exact same idea, because the majority of us, I mean, very few people find themselves at a young age. I mean, you go through different trends and you go through, you're trying to fit in a group, in a clique. And, you hear about that even now with like, the amount of kids that are all like, doing hormone replacement or think they're the opposite gender in groups. And you're like, statistically, that can't be accurate, that many people in one, and you realize like, oh, just because that's what my friends are doing, so
Right, it becomes a trend, and then I know a lot of, like, growing up, all my gay friends felt like outcasts. So I feel like it's something that make them popular, make you know what I mean. I think it's a very dangerous territory, and I went to like a liberal arts school, so I did have a transgender female in my class. And I did have a friend that dressed in drag when we go out. The person that was transgender, it still is, but the one that dressed in drag is a beautiful man. For me, I'm an artist, so I always loved drag queens. It was an art. It was an adult sexualized art show. I learned makeup from drag queens back in the day in Miami. You know what I mean? Like, I have all the love in the world for that, and I understand it is, but the amount and the easy accessibility, especially for really close friends of mine that are drag queens that are transitioning and want to do the full thing, and I'm like, wait, no, think about this. Give yourself 3 years, and then if you decide in 3 years you want to do it, but you can't go back. And that's the only thing that's the other thing, that we're not listening to the people that have had these transitions, right? And they regret it, and there are many accounts who are like, God, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I don't feel like myself. I don't. So I just pray that everyone can kind of see what's going on and do what's right for them.
well, it's kind of like getting a tattoo at 18. Like, it's
Right.
not a
Barbed wire.
yeah, exactly. How many people had barb or tribal? Like, if I
Yeah, dude.
it's like everybody regrets those tattoos, and because you do it in like it's spontaneous or it's just in the moment. Like right now, at this stage of my life, like I feel like this is cool, but in 10 years
Right.
from now, 5 years from now, it might not be. Like you were saying, you said tomboys. Like to me, like yeah, if you're a girl who just, I have friends that I grew up with that were more into sports and didn't really dress super girly. They didn't have to like surgically like get something attached to them. Like they're just a girl who likes things that are more guyish. Like no big deal. It
What's wrong
doesn't
with
mean you have to
that?
change your whole
Yeah.
persona and mess around with your hormones and all this stuff. And like you said, and then there's no going back to that. A tattoo, you can at least get it lasered off or whatever. Even that can be a pain in the ass, but at least you have a option or you can get it covered. Like this stuff, like you're changed forever. And
Right.
it might be just a stage of your life. And these
Right.
parents who think that they're helping the kids. No, like helping the kids is not just letting them do whatever they want. It's guiding them and giving them time to grow and protecting them sometimes from themselves.
100%. 100%. And thank God, I know there's parents out there like that, but the ones that are heavily influenced, I hope that they can, take the time to really look at what's going on. So I'll pray for it.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. Well, I think the thing is once you become a parent, like these are all issues that I think when we're growing up, we don't, it's like that saying, well, if you don't have a heart when you're young, you're not a liberal. If you don't have a brain when you're old, you're not a conservative. Uh, or you don't, yeah, something like along those lines. I
Yeah.
messed up, but you get the point. And I think as you get older, like you said, when you're young, like I grew up listening to the darkest metal, industrial
Right.
music. I mean, the darker, the weirder, the more I thought my parents were gonna dislike it, the more I liked it. I'm like, you
Yeah,
know,
of course.
Napalm Death, Slipknot, Cannibal Corpse. I mean, I'd listen to some stuff that I look back and I'm like, I can't believe my parents let me listen to stuff. But I'm a Portuguese immigrant, so like I don't think my parents knew what I was listening to. But how have you changed? Because like you're right. Like as a artist, a lot of times we do like to push the boundaries. We do like to go in weird and strange places. But now, as you get older and you become a parent, like for example, you start seeing the satanic stuff in performances. Like I had a conversation on another podcast about this. I'm like, I don't know if it's me getting old. Am I over? Because I'm like, as a kid would probably enjoy this, and now I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, they're trying to ruin the world. Like, am I over? Like, what's your feelings? Do you have that in internal dilemma where it's like, how much of it's just art and how much of it's propaganda?
Listen, I'm all about art and freedom in art. I really, really am. But I have to say, an example was like the Grammys. I was absolutely.
No, you froze for a second. Hopefully, you're not gone. I see you. I don't hear you. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I see. Oh gosh, the internet's so bad, just went out. Must have been what we were talking about. Um, but like I was saying, I think there's a fine line that you can cross, like with the satanic stuff in art. For me, I've always explored, like, film to me is so much freedom. I really do love to express myself in film. I've shot some pretty crazy videos before, but I have to tell you, like, after the Grammys, it didn't feel right for what I saw. They just made history with being the first transgender woman to win this award, the Grammy, blah, blah, blah. And then it was celebrated with Satan. And for me, being a huge supporter of the gay community for many years, all my best friends are gay. I just thought, wow, I can't believe that they're falling into the hands of what people already assume homosexuality is, and that it's evil, and that it's this, and that's everything we've fought against for so many years, and I don't know. It was very disappointing. And that's when I'm kind of just disgusted with music at this point too. I'm just like, I'm good. There needs to be more light. There needs to be more love. You can express yourself, but I don't know. Like Pussycat Dolls was always risque, right? The name itself was always, we couldn't even get on shows sometimes. I was like, well, what? And I thought that was like pushing the bar. But now things that they have on like mainstream television, like how sexualized things are, as a new mother, I'm like, I never thought I would be like this, but I don't even want to watch it. I don't find that female empowerment nowadays is empowering at all. Pussycat Dolls was empowering to me. I enjoyed that. I loved being on stage, but going back, because we were supposed to go back for reunion, and to be really honest with you, Ricky, like the choreography was too much. It was like, what? I remember looking at my bandmate Carmit and being like, I don't know if I'm gonna do this. I might break a hip. Like, it just didn't feel right going back either. So I guess that was all a part of my growing up.
It's it is a thin line, right, between
Yeah.
this art and expressing yourself and then going too far. And I think once you become a parent and you become a little older and you reflect on it, it's like I'm curious too, because it's like it didn't mess me up, right, listening to the dark stuff and all that. Listen to dark industrial music and whatnot. And to me, it kind of just reflected the way I felt. It was like, okay. And it was also intriguing to me. There's something fun about going against the grain and listening
You're
to
a rebel.
Yeah, being a rebel, it's but like I was gonna ask you about that too, about like just looking back at your Pussycat Doll career, and obviously, some of the dancing and all, and some of the videos had some it was sexual, but it wasn't to the point where, like you said, some of the music today, where it's just like it's not even like a creative metaphor. It's just like it's just out there, and it's just and you're glorifying it. And I mean, have you looked at, like, for yourself? Have you looked at your career, and do you? I mean, I think you probably already answered the question. You think that, like, okay, you probably didn't go over that line, but you were supposed to go on tour, like you said, in 2020, April 2020, right? And then the whole world turned upside down.
Sure
Uh,
did.
looking back at that, are you kind of happy that you didn't go ahead with that tour and what happened there, or do you feel like maybe they would have pushed you in a direction that you wouldn't have been comfortable with? And how do you handle stuff like that if you are pushed in a direction where you don't feel comfortable going? Because unfortunately, like, the music industry I'm always curious, like, is it the artist that's okay with this and maybe even doesn't see anything wrong with it, or is it people behind the scenes that are pushing them in these directions?
Well, first of all, with the Pussycat Dolls, I will say I'm not the artist, right? I'm a cast member. I'm a facet of whatever this is, and I am being told what to do. When I had my son, I looked at him, I realized that there's no way I could go back, right? Because when we were shooting a video, and I'm not trying to talk badly about this, but there was one scene where we have our legs over our head and we had to hold it, and it was like a minute hold while they were putting the camera up and down and up, and then I'm just sitting there, and I made a joke on set, and I said, wait, huh, how did I get here? And I wasn't kidding, and everyone's like, oh, and Nicole was like, too late. Like, it was like this whole thing, and I'm like, this is so degrading. And I think that's kind of where the music industry is like, to keep with the youngins, you kind of have to have that more sexualized type of choreography. It just doesn't mesh well with me. And there's no way at all. Obviously, I can't physically dance, but even if I didn't have a VAX injury, I wouldn't have gone back. I mean, I think the way that the tour was ended was really disgusting, because we found out on Instagram. Like, we didn't get a phone call from Nick, like, hey, it just, the whole experience went right back to 10 years ago. You know what I mean? The same thing. They even handed me a dud mic. It was a prop. Here you go. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what? And I've been a solo artist and singing live, and maybe I'm not the greatest singer, but for me, I can't go out that way. I cannot, I'm too old to do that. I can't, you'll never catch me lip syncing a Don't You again. You know what I mean? Like, I pride myself of how hard I've worked as a singer and as an artist. And I just feel like it was a setback to going back. It didn't feel right. I think I was just trying to prove myself that I still had it in me. But the truth was, even back in the day, it felt weird, but especially going back for the union, I was like, this doesn't feel right anymore. I've outgrown this, and I have to, I have to stand up for my child too. Like, I can't allow me to do something that doesn't feel right. And what am I showing to him? You know what I mean? Like, you can't settle for less. You're important, and your views and the way you feel are important. And I can't be a puppet ever again. No way.
Well, it's like they say, kids don't do what you say, they do what you do. And
Right. That's great. I love that.
yeah, we're examples to them.
Examples.
And that's to me, that's really important. Like, just being honest with yourself and being true to yourself, and there's more important there. And I think when you have kids, you realize that even more. Like, there's more important things to life than fame and money.
Ugh,
To
yeah.
me, like, what brings people true happiness is purpose and community, and being able to look in the mirror and being happy with what you do and what you say. I mean, it's in a much smaller sample size, like, me getting my show getting kicked off YouTube, even though that wasn't really my audience anyways, but there was people out there that I would like to reach. And I knew when I was getting these doctors on and I was posting it on YouTube, I'm like, I know it's just a matter of time. And but yet, to me, it's like that wasn't really, and I got censored when I had Del Bigtree on during COVID, and on iTunes, and it was and Mickey Willis, when I had him on, that show magically disappeared off of iTunes, and listeners were like, hey, I can't find the episode, and but I'm like, to me, I'm like, I know this is not good for like the expansion of the show, but I'm like, I have to get this information out there, and to me that's much more important than
I
trying.
think the work that you're doing, even though as hard as it was and how it's censored, you guys, the Robert Malones, you, all of you, Deltree, you are the ones that are going to be listened to when this, at the end of the day, everyone's going to go to you for facts and the truth. And once they really realize what the psyops that they've been under, once they wake up from the psychosis, I'm telling you, like, I believe you guys are on the right side of history. You guys have saved my life. You know what I mean? When I thought this was just like a muscle spasm, this is impossible, because I lived months thinking I didn't, that it wasn't the vaccine. I just know, I'm just dying out of thin air, healthy once before, and now I can't walk,
What interview or podcast or documentary or book, what was it that planted the seed of doubt that it wasn't just a health issue, but it was related to the vaccine? Was there something that kind of like first initiated that thought process?
Yeah, so our trainer, one of his friends in Boston had a vaccine injury, and they did a video, and it felt like it was thousands of women, but they were like, "Dear Pfizer, dear," and it was like box after box after box. And then they started naming all the symptoms that I was going, and I honestly told my husband, I was like, "Turn it off. I can't watch this." Because it was just so overwhelming, because I didn't want to accept this. I did trust that it was safe and effective. I couldn't imagine. This is like my worst nightmare, And slowly but surely, like, I started to accept it. I started speaking to her. She brought me into group chats. And then I went down the rabbit hole meaning the truth. It's like, I had to search through Instagram. And then I came across Dr. Robert Malone, Peter McCullough, Dr. Corey, Dr. Paul Merrick. I mean, the frontline doctors, like, and then Bree Dressen. It finally but it was all hidden from me. Like, it was like a scavenger hunt to find truth and to like feel sane, and it still feels like a scavenger hunt, because even some people that we should hear about, we don't. They censor it because because they're speaking the truth. Why are we stopping people from speaking the truth? Don't you see that that's a really big red flag? So
Yeah, they're only okay with censorship when they're censoring people they don't like, but eventually that censorship's going to turn on you, and it's going to censor the people you like, and
they're going to lose all credibility, and that's the issue. It's like no one's going to ever trust that side ever again after this. I know, I love what you put earlier, truth will prevail. That has been my motto. Truth will prevail. It'll manifest. It will be here. And I'm just sitting on the sidelines waiting, I think there's going to be a lot of apologies. I'm starting to get them now from doctors, which I was shocked. I even found a neurologist was like, because I was ready to go in there and fight, because it's always been an ongoing battle. One of the neurologists in her office told me a year before that it was impossible, that it would only just be like swelling around the injection. And I asked him, said, "What's wrong with me?" He goes, "I don't know," just like that. So I was like, ready, but now she's like, "No, you're not the only one. I know how to, I'm going to help you treat this. Let's do this." Because they're treating it like an autoimmune disease as well. So
and
it's a vaccine-induced autoimmune disease.
And I know in one of the interviews you've done, and I know you did the Epoch Times that interview, which, I mean, was that scary the first time because was that the first interview that you were outspoken about this?
It was. I became a really big fan of Epoch. Love Jan's show, and all the other shows I really enjoy. His in particular, because Breanne Dressen did an interview, and I was like, after I saw that thing on the military on KTLA, that I was like, I have to speak out. Like I was asked by a few people not to speak out, but I said, no, I got to do this. This is important. So I was shaking. I was really nervous. And I couldn't sleep for weeks after that interview because I was afraid of like the repercussions and speaking my truth, which is bizarre, but now I feel empowered by it. And I feel so grateful that I had the opportunity to do that, because there's so many people that need to hear this message. They need to have that like comfort, and I'm glad that I could be that beacon of light for some people.
Well, you got, I know you're giving my show way too much credit than it deserves, because honestly, like to me, like I have personal backlash, like during, like I'm much like yourself. Like I believe that the truth will prevail. And since I've been going down rabbit holes, there's been a lot of things that I'm like, okay, call me crazy for now, but I'm like, in time, you will be on the same page. I know that You know,
We only hope.
yeah, and there's been plenty of. I mean, I remember back in the day questioning 9/11. The heated arguments people would get with me. They're like, "How could you even question the official story?" I'm like, "All I'm telling you is, without a doubt, there's some fuckery on that day." And they're like, "No, no," you know. And and I was called because, you know, and so it's like I just trust that, like, hey, if I come at it in a civil way, and I'm just like this is just what I think, you can, you know, what, you know, and you just hold on for sometimes longer than you want to, but you just hold on. Eventually, people will come along. And I also think we all plant that seed. Like, you never know. That's why I asked you, like, what was it that which documentary, which book, which interview, which person? Because we're all a part of that ripple effect. Like, we're all a part of that awakening for people. We're a part of that process. Like, somebody might hear you know, a conversation you have with somebody, and they're like, oh, I think Jessica's crazy. And, but and then, right, like, they're going to hear somebody else say the same things and repeat similar things and
Right.
similar statistics, then somebody else, and you're all contributing, and eventually that person's going to be like, well, they can't all be crazy, and it makes
Yeah.
sense, you know. So it's like, I think a
Yeah.
lot of times we don't think we're getting through to people, and they're resisting, but a lot of that resistance just comes from, like, you're shattering their worldview, like you're shattering.
100%. People
You're,
get really angry about that too. They
yeah,
do. There's like a grieving part of like, I've been lied to. And that's what happened to me. It was like stages of grief. But here's the thing. Now I have data, scientific evidence, proof. You know what I mean? Like, you can call me crazy, but you can't. Cells don't lie. How about that? Cells don't lie. You know, personal like life experiences don't lie. You see them, you know, and eventually I think they'll come around. But yeah, that's that they're angry. I don't want to be lied to either. Trust me. This wasn't an easy pill for me to swallow. I
yeah,
trusted my government. I trusted my doctors. I trusted vaccines. Not anymore. And everyone's like, "Hey, you know, you should not create vaccine hesitancy." I'm like, you best believe I'm going to create hesitancy. I don't want this to happen to anyone else. I don't want another child to die on a football field. How about that? No parent should have to bury their child ever. Like, I'm getting angry again. Yeah, yeah, I have become anti-vax, and that's like the worst word you could ever say. I'm anti-vax, and I'm also anti-mRNA gene therapy shots, injections.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? That's why I give you so much credit for being outspoken the way you are and putting so much on the line. I've had other, you know, people on, like Jim Brewer and Kevin Sorbo and so many Zuby, and so many people who are, like, kind of in the public eye, who are willing to kind of say these unpopular opinions. And also Mayor Glenn Jacobs, who Undertaker's brother Kane, awesome guy. And, you know,
Oh,
WWE is a huge, I mean, he has a huge following from the WWE. And it's like, for him to be outspoken during the COVID lockdowns, and for basically doing what DeSantis was doing in Florida, in his state. And, you know, I'm like, it's career suicide. It would have been easier to just, like, be neutral, but instead he pushed back and pushed back. And same thing with you. Like, it would have been easier for you to just, like, privately handle your health issues and not publicly do these interviews. And the fact that you're willing to come on shows like mine and talk about this, and you know, to me, like, that's a hero. Like, you're adding and helping the awakening just as much as Dr. Pierre Corey and Dr. Robert Malone. Like, we're all a part of this. And
oh, thank you. That's such a thank you. Nice thing for you to say. Truly.
no, but it really is. I mean, there's a lot of people who look up to you and are going to respect your opinion, and know that, like you said, you grew up with, you're not a crazy Republican. I mean, I'm not a crazy Republican conservative either. I mean, you know, I don't know what I am. I'm politically homeless is what I
Me
am.
too. That's a great. Me too. Here's the thing. I've been getting so many comments as I've been following DeSantis. I've been following because I want to live back in the world where we can hear each other's opinions and agree to disagree, but we can still listen to everyone else's opinion, not just one narrative. And I had a lot of my fans saying, "This is a slippery slope. What are you, Republican now?" My answer to that is, I'm not political at all. In fact, this is far beyond politics. This is a huge, huge crisis. This has nothing to do with the left or right. We have to remember that. And that's why I stand with JFK Jr. I mean, RFK Jr. Like, I just feel like he's speaking the truth, and he's saying it's the big pharma, the big banks, that you guys need to wake up and we need to come together. We need to save the society. That's where I'm at, because humanity is more important than politics to me. You know what I mean?
Well, that's
Humanity is more important than fame or music or any of that crap. Like the fact that there's so many people suffering, I would feel like the worst person in the world if I didn't speak out. I would have guilt, and it would be heavy on my heart, because and to if I could stop someone from this happening to, then that's okay. That's worth it to me, to be hated.
yeah. And the thing is too is just like, if you see all the statistics and you still think you should get it, then that's on you. The part that makes me so upset is the fact that like people like yourself, like you didn't have access to all the information. Even worse, they suppressed the information that you should be seeing, and anybody who had a conflicting opinion. So
Sure.
your opinion was just based on big pharma's, marketing team, and yeah.
But
So
even with the media too, it was like you had to hate Tucker Carlson because, well, yeah, you say, and you have to hate Fox News. And like I never would watch that stuff, and then when this happened, I started really watching things, and then I watched Tucker, and I was like, I like this guy, like maybe I don't agree with everything he has to say, but like there's things that I don't know. There was no other view other than get vaccinated, save the community, save and effective. Like that was the programming.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Tucker did, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why he lost his job was
For
because
sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
Project Veritas. I mean, the guy Jim O'Keefe who started Project Veritas after that Pfizer video went viral, his board of directors kicked him out of his own company that he started, his own organization that he started. Like, and then you see Tucker. It's like the big pharma is like, growing up, like I was always very anti-war. I thought the military industrial complex was the scariest thing on earth, and they were controlling everything and all the narratives. And then little by little, I'm like, this big pharma group, I'm like, nobody's talking about them, and they seem to have a lot of influence because they're trying to vaccinate kids, and there's no real science behind this, and there's this correlation between all these health issues and the increase of vaccines in the schedule. I'm like, and nobody's talking about this, and I'm like, and then everybody's getting money from Pfizer and whatever, and the pill epidemic happened, and nobody's talking about it at all. Like no politicians talking about it. I'm like, maybe they're the scariest boogeyman that we're not talking about. And, and hopefully if there's any good thing that comes out of this whole COVID scenario and situation is the fact that like, I think there's a lot of people who are now questioning everything, and they're questioning all of it. And you've woken up a lot of people. I mean, I heard Brett Weinstein on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was another guy who was very outspoken. And he's like, seeing what happened with this COVID vaccine, the way they lied about it being safe and effective, and lying about how it's going to stop you from transmitting it, it's going to stop you from getting it, it's going to, all these this stuff that the president was lying to you about, and everybody was lying to you about, giving medical information that was incorrect. And he's like, now I'm questioning all vaccine science, and I'm like, yes. Yes. I'm like, thank God, because I'm like, that's exactly what people need to do. The same motives that led to them lying to you about this product, those motives are there when they're lying about the other products. Like it's all the same people, it's the same companies, it's the same, like it's no different. And this idea that people think like Pfizer can lie about the effectiveness of this product, but for some reason they're not lying about vaccines. It's literally one of the big or greatest tricks ever played on man, was like this idea that vaccines for some reason is the only pharmaceutical product that is run by moral people.
Right.
It's like the greatest trick. I'm like, no, it's the same suits and ties that are lying to you about this or lying to you about that. It's the same people, so.
And they're not liable for anything. They are protected, by the way, by the LLC Act that they did, in 1986 or something like that. So yeah, no, it's bad. It's the biggest war against humanity. It's the biggest crime against humanity. I say that every day,
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know I've already taken a lot. And
okay, MJ's napping, so I'm good now.
Great. But it is it is one of those things where it's frustrating, because even like what you just referenced, the 1986 Act, like how many people will argue about this topic, and then 2 minutes into the or 2 seconds into the conversation, you're like, wow, you have not looked into this at all. Like you
No.
don't know what you're talking about, and you're so passionately arguing with me and telling me I'm wrong, even though you have no idea what you're talking about. Like you,
And if you give them information, any education, any links, any documentaries, they don't even look at it. That's where I'm at a place where it's like the people that still don't believe me, close friends of mine, and I'm like, you're not looking at my interviews, you're not looking at this documentary, Antidotals, Unseen Crisis that Epoch came out with just recently, died suddenly. I mean, there's so many things, but it's like this like mind control, just go this way, don't look, don't ask any questions. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's gonna get old after a while, isn't it? So
I think that people are waking up, and I think that there's gonna. I mean, even the look at the candidates that are getting the most attention: DeSantis, Trump, Robert Kennedy Jr. I mean, people who I think probably align with like our worldviews a little bit more, and seem to be people who might push back a little bit more. And I think that's what people want. People, I think we're tired of the cookie cutter politician who just does whatever, and whatever they're told to say by the lobbyists and whoever. I think people are sick of like the fake celebrities and all the people who don't have opinions, or will just say whatever the PR team tells them to say. I think that's one of the reasons why podcasts got so popular. When I started in 2013, prior to starting, like that's one thing I loved about podcasts. I felt like everybody was fake. Like everybody, like the media has an agenda, the TV has an agenda, everybody has an agenda. I'm like, podcast was the only place where I felt like I could listen to organic conversations. I'm like, I just wanted to hear people discuss ideas, challenge ideas, bounce ideas off each other, share personal experiences. I'm like, that's the power of conversation. And we can everywhere else was just like, why are they telling me this? Why are they not telling me that? And really a long form conversation is the best way of like sharing these ideas. Like if you're on today's show, we're like, hey, we'll give you 13 seconds to share your story. People are like, yeah, Jessica sounds crazy, but it's like when you have time to actually hear your story, hear how you got to this spot, take the steps backwards, and it's like, okay, you weren't, this conspiracy theorist crazy person. You were forced into this position, unwillingly. Same thing with Robert Kennedy Jr. That's why I give him so much credit, because he didn't want anything to do with the vaccine topic. It got to a point where it became his calling. It became, something that he couldn't ignore. And when
God gave him a job, and he's doing a fantastic job with it too,
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, for people listening who want to keep up with some of your work, want to keep up with, I know you're on Instagram, some of the social media platforms. Where are you the most active? Any upcoming projects? I know obviously health has restricted some of that. Are you taking a pause and all that, and just kind of taking care of yourself first before you continue anything else?
Family is number one, and my son is number one priority. Then my health. Well, it should be health. But they're the same. But for me, art has always been this for me, an outlet. It helps me with my pain. So I have written a couple of things. I wrote a song, but my purpose, I think, right now is to be an advocate for react19.org. Please follow them and donate if you can. I do know that the money will help people. Like, for instance, I met a fellow vax injured who has neuropathy in her eyes, Sjögren's syndrome, terrible. She's about to lose her job. She has 2 autistic children. Okay. So, I mean, she's a single parent. It's helping these people that need the medical assistance, they need the financial assistance. These people are struggling and we're not seeing it. But my main purpose right now is to show the world what's really going on. As hard as it's going to be to see for most people, people need to have an understanding of how severe this crisis is with vaccine injury. I mean, it's just devastating. And I'm dedicating my life to it.
That is awesome. And so many people who are in this world. I know you've been on We the Patriots USA and the similar stories. The founders of We the Patriots USA, Brian Festa, who started the organization, a friend of mine who he used to live in Hartford and I live in Massachusetts, right over the border, and vaccine injured child. You look at like over and over again, so many of these people who are in this fight, they didn't just jump in it, they were forced in it. They have personal stories. They're not crazy people. They're people who were personally affected by these things. And so many people are like that. Dr. Brian Hooker from the Vax documentary, same thing. He was just searching for answers on like, okay, why is my kid possibly like, I think his autism could be related to the vaccine, goes to the CDC. CDC's he ends up uncovering that CDC has a study that they suppress from the public, that Dr. William Thompson was the author of. And now he's one of the leading voices in this battle. So it's just so many people are like that. There are people who have personal stories and now make it their life's work to share their story and help others, because there are a lot of people who don't have your courage to speak out, and hopefully you help. It's the same way that music helps us feel, like we talked about before. Art and music makes us feel like we're not alone and somebody else is in this dark place that we feel like we're in at times. I think a lot of people are going to hear your voice and be like, you know what, like it makes me feel better knowing I'm not the only one going through this, and she's still willing to speak out and find the energy to do these unusually long podcasts.
I've enjoyed talking to you. So anytime you want to do this, this is cool.
Yeah.
Just it's like these all, I feel like podcasts, you really get the real part of someone. It's not like a radio interview where it's all nerve-wracking and stuff. I don't know. It just feels more natural. So thank you for giving me this platform to speak my truth. And yeah, I just want to give a shout out to all the truth seekers. You are loved. Keep your tinfoil hat on, because I don't trust anyone else without one. So
and there's many more of us than you think. I had the guy.
I know.
I don't know if you remember that show Sports Science that used to be on ESPN.
Yes.
John Brankus, I think his name was John Brankus. He wanted to come on the show. He had a new book, whatever came on, and we had a really good conversation. Then after the show, he's like, you're not recording, right? And then all of a sudden he starts talking to me about all the episodes I did on like the more fringy topics that he's like, oh, I can't talk about this stuff on. I'm like, why not, John? I'm like, there's nothing wrong with questioning the mainstream narrative. I'm like, if you're just being honest and saying, hey, like, first of all, history is full of examples of us being lied to. Like, so us questioning things, like, to me, it's almost like that, having that abusive significant other and then being like, no, he loves me this time. He's not going to hit me. He told me he loves me. It's like, no, like, you assume that he's probably going to hit you again because he keeps doing it. Well,
You say one thing wrong, you get slapped in the back of the head.
I mean, that's kind of like the mainstream media. That's like TV. That's like just about everything around you. Like, we're just constantly being lied to. It almost makes more sense to assume that you're being lied to and you're guilty until proven innocent instead of innocent until proven guilty. When you've been lied to that often, it's like, no, I'm not going to believe anything you say. I'm going to do my own research and then I'm going to come to a conclusion. I'm not going to take your word for it. So to me, that's the healthier way of looking at things. And I know it's difficult because, again, like, shattering your worldview and looking at the world like, oh my God, like I grew up in this rosy, illusion of reality. And all of a sudden I realized, like, this world of, like, everything being a social engineering tool, and there's people who want to control us, and it can be scary, but history's full of that. I mean, Genghis Khan, Hitler, I mean, over and over again, there's always been people and people who want to control those people. And now we live in a world where we assume that that's history. That's not, we don't live in that world anymore. We've found some, global enlightening where, like, now people are good and everybody gets along and nobody wants to control people and do harm to people. And I'm like, no, man, unfortunately, that's not reality. But
it's even worse now than ever.
Yeah. But
it's just like, yeah.
It's also important to do the things that you're talking about, and that's enjoy the simple things and enjoy family and friends and art and any creative thing you can do, because I think that really it is a sense of therapy. It helps people get through things, and it helps. I mean, I think that's why a lot of us grew up loving music and playing music and being creative and doing anything artistic, because you feel like you're taking what's in and you're putting it out. You're doing something.
For sure. And I have a lot of emotion inside, and I'm a writer, so the silver lining of this whole thing is that I've been writing like a crazy person. And, since I can't dance, when I went to the producer, I just played simple chords on the piano. That's how I write. And I gave it to him and I said, I need you to make the music move like I would dance. And I need the violins to be weeping, and he sure did it. I'll send it to you. And it's just, for me, like, that's my wheelhouse, where I feel so much comfort and healing in that process. And hopefully it'll translate that to other people that listen.
Yeah, they talk about how like even if you're mad at somebody, you can just text mess or write out the text message or write out the email, but don't send it. And
Yeah.
writing it makes you feel better. I'm like, that makes perfect sense because I was just
Yeah.
I was the lyricist in our band growing up, and I always wrote poetry, and I always felt like a sense of relief after writing it. Like I always felt like I didn't spend an hour talking to a therapist, but for some reason I felt like I did. Like I felt like I got it out, you know, and I think that that's what happens a lot, right? Like you need, if it's exercise, if it's so much of our social issues or, you know, the problems we have with society is that we're overstressed, we're overworked, we're told that happiness is all financially driven. Like, oh, you have more ones and zeros in your bank account, you're going to be happier. Or you're going to be, if you're more famous, you have more followers on Twitter and Instagram, you're going to be happier. And you find out that all those people are miserable and there's sacrifices to be made to have those. It's like I look at people who make a lot of, you know, I had Jim Brewer was on the show not too long ago, and
That's so cool.
he told this joke that was, you know, I don't even think he meant it to be a joke. He was just telling the story about moving to Florida, and he was talking to this guy. He's like, and there's these, you know, I meet all these guys, all these cars, and this guy has like, you know, hundreds of cars, and we're going through his garage, and he's talking, you know, talking about his cars, whatever this and that. And he's like, and then we're talking, and then he starts talking about his kids and how his kids don't talk to him anymore, and how, you know, how the relationship, you know, isn't very good. And then Jim's like, well, I guess at least you have the cars, right? You know, it's joke about like, yeah, dude, like you probably were too obsessed with like the wrong things, like making, and that's the thing, like money addiction and success addiction and fame addiction is addiction. This symptom, I always say this, like the symptoms are exactly the same. We live in a world where we glorify money addiction and fame addiction because it's like, oh, look, he's successful, he's a go-getter. I'm like, well, if he's, you know, basically has no community, no friendships, no spirituality, no peace, internal peace, but and every reason he wakes up in the morning is just to get more money, then isn't that an addiction we should also frown upon? Like it's the same thing. It's going to lead to, you know, not being a very good person. It's going to lead to, you know, you not having very good relationships with others. And at the end of the road, you're probably going to look back and say, hey, I sacrificed my friendship, maybe my marriage, maybe my relationship with my kids, all to get, you know, this bigger house or whatever, and it didn't make me happy, you know. And yet you find tribal communities that, you know, are have no signs of unhappiness and no signs of depression, because they say like when the richest and the poorest people in the community, when that gap is very big, then people are at the least happy, and then when that gap is much smaller, people are more happy. And I think that's true because we live in a world where we're just constantly like envious of others because they're constantly showing off like, hey, look how happy I am. Like nobody takes pictures of them when they're unhappy, so you assume,
Right.
oh, look, this person's always happy. It's like, no, they have struggles in their lives just like you just don't see them, you know.
Oh,
And
and
so
I'll show you that.
yeah, and so it paints this picture perfect world and life that they're living, which isn't. And yet, like now, you put yourself on that. You know, you want to hold yourself to those standards. Where it's like, well, I want to have those things, and I want to have, you know, that happiness. And why aren't I, you know, this beautiful or whatever? And it's like, it's none of it's real, you know.
None of it, no, especially in Hollywood. Anything you see on Instagram, it's all Photoshop. It's so bizarre, you know. But I think the most important thing in life is family and your health. That's what I've learned through this journey. The most important, and knowing yourself completely, completely. Like
Yeah,
when you hate yourself, no matter if being gaslit, no matter who does, you know your truth. That's all you need. And that's been a really big practice for me, you know, because I'm such a people pleaser. I want to be accepted so badly, but at the end of the day, I have to accept myself.
you sound like my wife. My wife's, if somebody doesn't like her, she's always like, but I don't know why they don't like me. I'm like, who cares? I'm like, I don't like, we don't know why. They might have another agenda. Maybe they're saying they don't like you or because of some other thing. Maybe they're jealous, or maybe they're envious, or maybe they're not happy and they're trying to make you unhappy, you know.
Right.
Or maybe they're just mean people who are just going to say, and that they exist too. They're just mean people who just do and say mean things, and they're
Right.
miserable people. Like that's, you can't make everybody happy. And like you said, that's so important. Like first you have to find peace. Like you have to be happy with yourself. You can't make anybody else happy if you're not happy. And if you spend your whole life trying to make everybody happy, you're never going to be happy. Like be at a good spiritual place, be somewhere where you're like, okay, I like who I am. I'm going to do my best to be the best person I can be. I'm going to, when I mess up, I feel bad about it. I mean, I nobody has more, maybe I'm sure somebody does, but I'm at least top three in like parent guilt. Like I feel guilty. I'm like, oh, dude, I got more upset than I should have. I'm like, why did I do that? I'm like, I could have kept my cool. Yeah, they were acting up. Yeah, I told them not to do that 100 times and they did it anyways. But I'm like,
Right.
but still, like I could, like maybe I could have handled it better. Maybe there's another way to get through to them. Like I'm always looking in. Like I'm always pointing the finger at me before I point the finger at anybody else.
And that awareness makes you an amazing, amazing parent. I think it's the awareness and knowingness of all of that, of these thoughts and having those conversations with yourself, But you could tell your wife this. What I've learned is rejection is God's protection. I believe that wholeheartedly, and especially if I'm not accepted by people, it's God protecting me, and I'm okay with that, And the friends that I do have, man, do I love them, and I'm going to love them forever and ever.
Yeah, I think many of us have lost some friends the last couple years.
I
But
have. Like the only bandmate I talked to is Carmine. Everyone else is all, I'm out of here. Like, oh, you don't feel well? Okay. Oh, well.
well, I always say I'm like your real friends will come to the surface when shit hits the fan. I'm like everybody wants to be your friend when things are good, but I'm like
Right.
when it's hard to be your friend, the ones who stick by you, those are your real friends. And and that's why I also say like family isn't just friends. I grew up calling people uncles and aunts and who had no blood relation, but they were just around all the time, and I treated them like family, and they treated me like family. And so I tell my kids the same thing. My kids have a bunch of uncles that they call uncle that are no relation to them.
Right.
Uncle Dave, Uncle Robbie. And it just it's because they're as close to me as family. Sometimes, friends are even closer than family.
Right.
And that's what
Whole family.
exactly. That's what a family is. It's the people you love and the people who love you and the people who are going to be there with you. So,
Yeah.
without a doubt, like, you're sharing some beautiful messages, and I think, it's beautiful that you have a child that's going to help you through all this. And I'm sure even if mommy's not at 100%, he's just happy that mommy's here and mommy's there, and because
Mommy is happy to be alive. Each day is like a blessing, because to be honest with you, I don't know what's going to happen with me. I just don't. And I live life to the very fullest. I really do. Like it's my last, because that's the issue, the anxiety that you live in constantly. You just don't know what tomorrow brings. But whatever it brings, I'll take it, and I'll embrace it and be the best person I can be at that time too. So.
Well, hopefully, more as we understand, we start figuring out what's causing these adverse reactions. More and more information will come to the surface, and hopefully, we learn more about it, and we have more solutions. And I mean, there's always some amazing doctors out there who are, finding really interesting ways of dealing with disease, and the human pretty amazing. So,
yeah, Frontline, FLCCC, they're my heroes. My Dr. Rachel West, my new doctor, she's one of my heroes. I mean, there are really amazing physicians. All the rest need to just retire and go get ice cream with Joe Biden.
yeah, ice cream or Jello or whatever.
Or Jello.
Whatever old people. If anybody ever believed, like I remember telling people, I'm like, the president doesn't run shit, and people are like, oh yeah, yeah. I'm like, and I'm like, do you really think Joe Biden's making any decisions? I'm like, it
doesn't even know he's president.
and the things that are, speaking of like all the weird videos of him smelling kids and like his story about being in the pool, I'm like, how is this acceptable? I'm like, you guys have become so tribalistic that you hated Trump so bad that like you are justifying some of the crazy stuff he has done and said just because you hate the other guy so much. And that's a huge.
Well, that was media though. Media destroyed Trump. Destroyed him. I hated him for the longest time. I don't hate him anymore. And I'm probably going to get canceled for saying that. I don't hate him. I watched the unedited versions. I watched his real interviews that weren't cut or things, he's actually a really good man. The grab him by the whatever, that whole thing. Yeah, he was right. There are people in the celebrity world where women would be like, yeah, do it. because fame and money to most women, especially in Hollywood, they don't see any, there's no boundaries, you know.
I
But
hope
I don't
nobody
know. He has
clips
some
that.
thick skin, man.
I hope nobody clips the part where Jessica goes, "Yeah, it's that grab him by the yeah, he was right," and and
Oh no, cut that.
I'm kidding. Hopefully nobody. No, I'm not on YouTube, so I mean anybody
No.
who.
Okay, go. No, but I mean, like, because that was why I hated him, you know, and then all of these women coming out. I mean, I don't know. Aside from that, I've realized we've been lied to so much that I really had to lean in and see everyone else's point of view. Even Candace Owens. Candace Owens is canceled, but she has really amazing documentaries. She, you know, I don't know. I just think that it's good to look at other people's perspective, listen to other people unedited versions, not what the media is trying to, you know, make you think. So
Yeah, that's so important. I have people on here all the time that I disagree with. I mean, I've had
yeah,
libertarians. I've had, Professor Richard Wolff, who's like leading scholar in Marxism and socialism, and I'm like, I'll have anybody on. I'm like, I want my ideas to be challenged because if I just become tribalistic and say, hey, I plant my flag here, like that's the end of growth. Like you grow by saying, like, I don't plant my flag anywhere. Like this is just my opinions and my perspectives right now, but I'm open to change and I'm open to learn and I'm open to seeing different perspectives. And if there's somebody out there who has a different opinion, like I want to explore that and see like maybe there's a perspective and point of view I haven't explored yet, and I haven't looked at this issue from that perspective, and maybe somebody's making a really valid point, and if I just dismiss it because it goes against my worldview, then I'm not going to grow and I'm not going to learn. And that's really like one of my purposes. I always say like life's this incredibly large puzzle, and like everything you learn and every step of the way on this journey, like you grab one more piece of that puzzle, and I know by the end of my journey, like I'm not going to have all the pieces to understand the image completely, but I hope I can gather enough where that image starts making a little bit of sense, where you can be like, okay, I kind of start figuring out what the purpose is, and that's what people should be doing is really not dismissing things, and also understanding that like you're just a pawn in a greater game, and they'll use there's a lot of people who are for one issue or against one issue. Their heart's in the right place, but a lot of them have been tricked. And the people who are telling you to fight for these issues, they don't even care about those issues. They're just using you as a pawn. So,
that's the issue. That's the issue. I think that the gay community is being used right now for ulterior motives, and I stand with Gays Against Groomers. They're a charity that is fighting against, and they're all gay, lesbian, transsexual people who, that's who they are, but they see what's going on with the children and they're against it. And I stand with that, so I just pray that the world heals soon. We need it.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like they make everything a homophobe thing. Where it's just like, no,
Right.
like this is just I don't care if it's like straight couples or straight sex. Like I don't want any sex around my
No
kids.
sexualized things. They cross the boundary. They really, really do. I mean, the videos that the Gays Against Groomers have been showing of like the prides of the kids involved with these very sexualized performances and acts. And I don't want my son to do that. And I'm open-minded. And when he's 18, he can do whatever he wants. But let's keep the kids kids. What's the problem with that? Why is that an issue? Let them play in the sandbox. They're going to be old for the rest of their life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and
these
why
are
confuse
babies.
them? I remember seeing a interview with Megyn Kelly on Bill Maher, and they're people from complete different, political perspectives, but they were coming together on this issue because Megyn Kelly was talking about this New York private school, how like they're asking her child like what gender they felt like they were, and like all these weird questions, and then she comes to find out like she's like, well, let me move to a different school, and then come to find out like all the schools were having the same issues, and Bill Maher and Megyn Kelly, different political backgrounds, different political views, but they could all come together and say like this isn't right, and they're both agreeing on this. And I'm like, that's the point. Like this isn't a political issue. Like this isn't a left versus right. This isn't a anti-gay against pro-gay, whatever. It's like leave the kids alone. Like this is you're confusing kids. Kids should not be like listen, they have the internet. They don't need your help. They don't need, they're going to find this stuff on their own, and they're going to be asking questions and going down holes on their own. I don't need a teacher to ask my child, like, hey, what gender do you think you are today? Like, or any of these things. It's ridiculous.
It is. And then the fact that they're like, you don't have to tell your parents and this, and like, whoa, no, 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 no. Like, that's where I draw the line. But I think until you become a parent yourself, you really don't understand this, I don't know. For me, I don't know. You got to let the parents know everything and just keep the kids kids. That's all we're asking for.
Yeah, without a doubt. But,
Yeah.
hey, listen, you can come on anytime you want, anytime you're gonna.
Thank you, Ricky.
We could chat about whatever's going on in your life. Maybe get a health update. Hopefully, things will be turning for the better, and you'll be feeling better next time we talk. And you always have a home here to
Thank you.
get out some of your views and talk about what's going on in the world and
Oh.
discuss these things. And I think conversation is also therapy, so it
Yeah.
definitely helps. And thank you so much, like I said, for your courage. I really, really appreciate it. I don't say that lightly. People who are in the public eye who are willing to be outspoken like yourself, it really does take a lot. We all know that it comes with prices. Those prices are always, I think, in your case and in many of our cases, like they're always worth the price of any backlash that comes with being outspoken, because like you said, you have to be happy with who you are and what you do in your journey. And congratulations on being a somewhat new mom.
Thank you. He just turned 2 and he's just the love of my life.
It's
Besides my husband, of course.
yeah, it's awesome. There's nothing like it. And I don't, it's funny. I almost like, if I like somebody or don't like somebody, it's almost based on like how good of a parent they are. Like I have this, you notice that, like you start judging people based on how good of a parent you are. I'm like, somebody who's a really good parent, like you end up liking them better. I'm like, oh, it seems like a really good person, like, or even if I see celebrities like yourself, like, and I see them with their kids, I'm like, you know what? I root for that person now. I'm like, I like that person, just because there's just something beautiful about somebody who really embraces the experience. And I don't get people who go through the same thing as we've been through. And I mean, obviously your experience is slightly different than mine. I'm not a woman, but
not yet. I mean, you have a choice. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Exactly. Oh, that's a whole no. We don't have enough time to get. But I don't get people who go through the experience of becoming a parent and it doesn't change them. Like I've met people like this, and I'm like, how? Like I don't get it. Like you can't wait to get back to work, and you can't, like, you're okay with like sending your kid to daycare all day, and then and you're like not even around, and the grandparents are always watching the kids. Like you don't want to be a part of that, So it's
I don't understand that. I've had ex-boyfriends that were in their children's life. And now I look back, I'm like, how did I even date you? Ew, I don't know.
Well, it's kind of a reflection of who they are, right? It's like it kind of exposes a little bit of selfishness, and it's like, and to me, it's like being a parent, it's like the most easiest thing I could do. I'm like, I can't help but want to be around my kids all the time and help them and be involved. I mean, every time I'm away, like even when my wife is like, "Oh, we need a date night," we'll be out. I'm like, "You think the kids are having fun?" It's like they got to be doing something where they're having fun, because I always feel guilty if I'm having fun and they're not. I'm like, I can't without them. I'm like, if maybe we get a babysitter, or they're usually at my parents' house, but I'll make sure my brother brings his kids over so they're all having fun. I'm like, okay. I'm like, and then I don't feel as guilty, So
parent guilt is a real thing, man.
Real thing, yeah. But thank you so much, Jessica. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, even though I've already taken up your whole afternoon.
It's all good.
And we'll hopefully
fun.
I'll send you links to the show once it's up and live. Feel free to share it and post it anywhere you would like. And we'll talk again in the near future.
That sounds good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, feel better and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Okay. Bye.